All right, so many things to do in the morning. All right, so the Zoom is live, and so I want to pull up a PowerPoint for you so we can review ecological succession, and then I'll talk about your assignment. So let's share that first. Still letting folks in. You're gonna have to wait a second. Okay. I'm trying to admit people and click on the slideshow at the same time, and it's not liking that. All right, so we talked about what is succession yesterday, and then I don't think we went as far as talking about there are two types of succession. So we're going to do that first. Look at the two types of succession, what exactly succession is, and then I'll talk about your Maui project. The reason we picked Maui is because there was a lot of beautiful, beautiful vegetation that took years to develop, and then all of a sudden we have a natural disaster, and the area has to regrow. So this is why I wanted you to look at Maui. Give me 1 second to get this looking like that. Okay, good. All right. So we're looking, there's a difference between primary succession and secondary succession. So first we're going to look at primary succession. So we had a lot of reading yesterday, but I want you to jot down these notes here. Primary succession occurs when plants begin to grow where there was, and this is the important part, previously lifeless area. Okay, so we're starting from dirt and there's nothing there but dirt. Okay, so you look down at the picture, and what they didn't have in the exercise yesterday was a picture like this. So this is the picture you need to kind of grasp in your head. So the first block or the first stage of primary succession is nothing but rocks. And because there's nothing but rocks there's not a lot of nutrients. So when things try to grow, they can't grow very high because there's not a lot of nutrient for them to gain energy from. So there's going to be really, really tall, what we call low vascular plants. So those would be your lichens and mosses. And they're just little kind of green things that kind of sit on top of the rocks. So you have the exposed rocks, and eventually you're going to get these little low vascular plants, okay? And so we call them the pioneer plants because they're the ones that are going to start the succession in that area. Okay, so this is the first part. Eventually, these organisms kind of loosen up the soil a little bit and they add some nutrient to the soil. So then we get our second stage where we can have small shrubs and herb trees. So you see there's a little more growth. You got a little more greenery. And I'm looking down at the bottom picture. And then the third stage, because they have added some more nutrients to the soil when they die and they recycle the um, organic materials that they're made of, then they add a little more richness to the soil. Plants with can start to, and then they change the composition of the soil so that plants can actually get in and grow deeper roots. So in the first one, they had very shallow roots because it's a lot of rock and water can't get deep. The second area, you got a little deeper because the plants are creating looser soil, so they're changing the composition. By the third stage, um, it's the soil is a little better, so you can get they have a healthy mat on the ground is what that is saying. And then by the time you over time, and now this is taking time, and then the guy in the video yesterday said this could take hundreds of years for this to happen. Then you get enough fertility so that trees can grow. Okay, and eventually you have larger trees growing. So then they call that the climax community. So you start with pioneer plants, and then you have small vegetation where the roots are shallow. And then because they exist over time, they loosen up the soil so that bigger plants can grow. And then eventually you have enough richness to the soil that big trees can grow. And we call that a climax community. Okay. All right. So over here at the bottom, it says climax community. So hopefully you wrote that down. So again, it starts in an area where there's nothing. It starts with rocks. Um, the pioneer organisms decompose the rocks and loosen it up so that we can have more bigger trees. Okay, so it goes to soil buildup, and then you have low productivity at the beginning. All right, so I'm going to go on to the next slide. Is everybody good with this one? Anybody need me to stay here a minute? Okay. All right, so then we have secondary succession, and notice how it looks a little different. So secondary succession is where our Maui conversation is coming in. Yes, you're just following along, but you should take some notes. So if you didn't write anything down on that first slide, um, you should have. But when I'm finished with this, I'm going to embed it in the module so that you can look back at it. All right, so the secondary succession, you have new group of organisms take over after a dramatic environmental change, such as fire or flood. So in other words, it's not really starting from rock. The fire or the disaster probably destroyed a lot of the vegetation, but it didn't destroy everything. So you still have a little bit of fertility to the soil, so that you're not starting from scratch, so to speak. Okay, so the soil is already present, and therefore things have the ability to grow back faster. So that's the difference between primary succession and secondary succession. Secondary succession happens a little bit quicker because you're not starting from rock. You're not trying to create new soil, but you are trying to create new vegetation. Okay, so make sure you have those two definitions. I'll stay here for a minute. Anybody need me to flip back to the first one? Because you should have been writing these definitions down. And you need to discuss this in your Maui conversation. All right, so I'm going to go back, go back, go back, go back. If you look, okay, so primary. So write down heading, primary succession. Important part of difference between primary and secondary succession. And actually, my next slide has them side by side, but I wanted you to see it with the picture here. So I have a comparison slide coming up next. There is nothing at the beginning of primary succession. You have basically wasteland and unfertile soil, most likely rocks. It says little to no soil. All right, here again, lichens and moss are really small plants. They don't have very long roots. So they're going to get their water and nutrients from the top of the soil. And then what they do in trying to get their roots into the soil, they start breaking down the rock and creating soil. The other term you need to remember is pioneer plants, and those would be your lichens and mosses, or low vascular plants. Low vascular means they don't have we have veins and arteries that carry our nutrients around. Plants have veins called xylem and phloem. And these kind of plants don't have very long ones. They're very short, so because the water doesn't have to go very far. And that's good because this kind of rocks don't hold water in the soil. So they're dependent on whatever water is on the top of the soil. Okay. All right, so eventually their activities, decomposing and trying to grow roots, it breaks up the soil, breaks up the rock and creates soil. Because when they decompose, they add nutrients to the rock area, and that allows the next stage to grow. And so with each stage, more things decay, more things are breaking up the rock, more things are adding to the richness of the soil. And so eventually you get to the point where the pine trees and the spruce trees can grow, and then eventually trees that are hardier and stronger than those grow. And that group is called the climax community. There's probably not going to be a community that is more predominant than they are. Okay, so pioneer plants, climax community, beginning and end of the succession process. And again, notice the line at the bottom, it says time. This takes time. This doesn't happen overnight. You've seen trees, somebody plant a tree in your front yard. It takes years for that tree to grow to maturity. Okay, so this could take hundreds of years, thousands of years for this process to take place. Which is the important part of looking at secondary succession, because when you have something like a natural disaster, something that took thousands of years, hundreds of years to create is wiped out in an instant. And then we have to look at that growing back. All right, anybody need me to stay here? Can I move? Okay. All right, so again, secondary succession is occurs after. And that's the important after a dramatic environmental change, such as a forest fire, flood, hurricanes, earthquakes. Those can alter the um, the land and the vegetation. In California, they're not only having fires right now, they're having avalanches or mudslides where people building their house on the top of the cliff overlooking the ocean, and all of a sudden the whole house is sliding down into the ocean because, and it's changing the whole terrain of that location. All right, so again, there's already soil present, so we're not trying to create soil, but the disaster more than likely took the top vegetation away. So this again takes time. So you're instead of starting with lichens and mosses, you're starting with smaller plants that have some that can grow some roots. And then you have the annual weeds and grasses that can grow taller, which will lead to shrubs. And then your young pine forest, and then a healthy hickory forest. Okay, so this is faster because there's already soil present. The other one had to create soil. Okay. Okay. Give me a minute to look at what might be blocking. Um, they did tell us that you just can't wander any and everywhere, so I might just give you a website to look at. All right, so give me a sec to get to that. I might have one for you that won't be blocked, or I can unblock this one if it's blocked. All right, so again, we're comparing. This is just a comparison list, and you need to be able to compare them. So primary succession occurs in an area where there's no life earlier, whereas secondary occurs where there was earlier, but the area was destroyed. Um, In primary succession, the development of biotic, meaning the living trees, is very slow. Plants, and then even the animals that will come into that community will be very sparse because they feed on the vegetation. So if there's not much vegetation, you're not going to have much biotic factors there either. Whereas the development of the biotic factors in a secondary succession will be a little bit faster, meaning they're not starting from the lichens. You don't have the same pioneer species. All right. And then they give you those two examples where of bare rock, barren land, cooled lava. So after a volcanic eruption. All right. An abandoned farm where nobody's taking care of it, and areas that were burnt or cut down forests. So deforestation can also cause it. All right, so I wanted you to look at these two pictures. So this is what we mean by the devastation in Maui. When they started off, and it took, again, hundreds of years for the first picture to be the norm. And then overnight, it looked like this. So that same area near the water now is totally burnt down. But notice, although it's burnt out, you still have some greenery. So we're not totally starting from scratch. Okay, so your discussion was supposed to do, and let me come out of this because that is my last slide. I want to give you some time to work on that. Okay. All right, so these are the questions you need to look up when you're researching your question on Maui. How did the fire affect the area there? So again, looking at the picture that I just showed you, you want to talk about um, what it looked like before the fire happened, and then what was what kinds of trees and animals were there before the disaster, and what is the stage of recovery now? So let me see if I can't. Give me a second. I'm going to stop sharing. And actually, think about that for a minute. I do need to do attendance before it gets too late. So I'm going to stop sharing. And somebody said that someone will try to find you a website that we can unblock. I think I had one too. Not that one. Okay, I'm going to share this website with you, and then you let me know if you can't get into this one. Or somebody just said that a lot of the places that you're trying to look are blocked. So see if you can get in this one. Okay. Check that one and see if you can get into that. That's where I got the pictures that I just shared with you. But it has a whole page of before and after pictures, a lot of discussion as to what happened. Right. Are you able to get into that website? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So use that and see if that will help you. And then again, while it's really just general looking at the houses and stuff, we're interested in the recovery of the vegetation. So see if you can't get to. There's one about the banyan tree that got burnt. There's a before and after picture about that. Um, so just kind of scroll through and pick through what you can get from them. While you're doing that, I'll try to find another website that might help. All right, don't log out because if you log out now, you might get marked absent. Okay, let me look at this. Avery, I'm checking on your email just now. Um, okay, I'm looking at the grades. So right now, for most of you, the two current assignments that are outstanding, quite a few of you still have to do your types of symbiosis, and that's due tomorrow. That's you have until the 12th before that's late. So make sure that you've done that. And so that's not late yet. And then the other assignment is this Maui discussion, which is brief. And that is due. That might be, I need to change the date on that one. That's due today. That's no, that's also due on the 12th. So in both cases, you have until tomorrow to submit those two assignments before they're marked late. Okay. All right. And Avery, uh, tell me exactly what it's saying that you're missing, because I don't see anything missing. There were some things, I think I might have had something in that had no grade value, and you weren't supposed to submit anything for those. So I took those out of the grade book. So the grade book shouldn't be showing anything that had zero value anymore. So the only thing that should be showing in the grade book are things that actually have to be graded. And, okay. Yeah, that was probably before. So I took the biome color chart out. So everybody, it's probably going to say missing for everybody, and I didn't want it to say missing for everybody. So don't worry about that. I took it out. So you're not missing anything. Okay. And there was something else. I think it was the biome chart, and there was something else that was just meant to be a file for you to look at, and it had no value, but it was showing up in the grade book, and it was causing it to tell you that there was a missing assignment, and it's not a missing assignment. So you're good. Okay. Now, if you see a zero in your grade, not missing, then the zero means that that you have been given a zero for that assignment. Other than that, and Aiden, you don't have any of those. Okay. I got you, Ethan. Let me see if I can do that right now. Okay. Before I say that, let me make sure I'm telling the truth. And actually, Ethan, the only thing that you need to give me is the Maui discussion, and you're up to date. So I'm going to send that email right now. Okay. Oh, okay. I see that. All right, Jalen, I'll look at those. I don't know why they're not done. And actually, you also need to do Tragedy of the Commons. But I will look at the two that are. Okay. When you all submit late assignments, please send me a message that I need to look for them. All right, because technically on this one, even if I put a grade in, it probably will cancel it out because it's late. Yeah. So I have to take the late off in order for you to have any grade at all. And it looks like it takes a point off for each day that's late. So being more than 10 days late on a 10-point assignment kind of gives you a 0. All right, so we're not going to try to be late on our assignments anymore. All right, folks. So time is up for today. So if you don't have any more questions for me, does anybody else want me to look at their submissions? I'll see you tomorrow.